because she is.
Oh no. Okay.
Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to Kernels of Truth, brought to you by Progress Kentucky. We're so glad that you have joined us this evening. Thank you for taking time out of your busy week to spend a little bit of it with us. We got a great show for you this week. We are going to be covering breaking political news out of our fair Commonwealth. We got an eye on a few stories we think you'll find interesting. First of all, we're looking at the shuttering of diversity offices at higher education locations across our state. We have got an important story about the GOP failing to fund very important juvenile justice reform and hiring that's required to bring our juvenile justice system, kind of out of the Stone Ages and to provide the services these kids need. And then we're going to look at Louisville. And what the heck is going on in Jefferson County with the House Dems there? And then finally, we are going to do an interview with Adam Moore, the man who is working hard, working nonstop to flip the 45th. This is the House district that's probably one of the most competitive races in the Commonwealth. Then we will have a November call to do something because we are getting awfully close to that election, folks. So before we do that, though, I want to check in and make sure you're ready to help turn Kentucky purple. We hope you agree with us that Kentucky deserves far better than Mitch McConnell, Rand Paul, Jamie Comer, Big Bank's Andy Barr, and the GOP supermajorities in the General Assembly, which block our governor time and time again from moving Kentucky forward. Despite the challenges facing Kentucky, we've had some pretty significant highlights. A couple years ago, we rejected Amendment 2 to keep abortion protections in our state constitution for all the good that did us. We then reelected Andy, which obviously has been great for our Commonwealth. So it's clear we can get things done in November in Kentucky, but there's lots to do if we want to win better electoral outcomes. Unless you want your tax dollars siphoned away from public schools and sent to unaccountable religious schools, or just kicked back to rich folks. So between now and November, 62 days from now, we're going to be working for better electoral outcomes in Kentucky. We hope you'll support Progress Kentucky in our campaign for a more compassionate Commonwealth. Make a contribution right now via a secure online website. Just takes a minute to act blue to help turn Kentucky purple. $5, $50, $500. If we had $50, an additional $50 a month, make it a monthly contribution between now and the election. We can contact so many more voters via social media versus direct, our direct voter contact work. That'll really make a difference, and we could really use your resources. So let's now check in with our co-hosts. Let us know who you are, where you are, what are you protesting today. And if you're watching on the interwebs, feel free to put your protest sign in the chat. So I'm Aaron. I'm coming to you from Lexington, Kentucky. My protest sign says today, enjoyed your long weekend. Thank you, union. And a lot of people, just like to grill on that extra weekend day, but you got to focus on why you got that day and what we're commemorating, which is the hard-fought victories, 40-hour work week. Having a weekend each and every week, healthcare, pensions, we used to have pensions, unions fought for those, and lots of other important things for our workforce that unions fought for and we all enjoy. So whether you're a union member or not, keep that in mind. All right, now let's check in with our co-hosts. Dr. Clardy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yeah. I'm broadcasting here from Murray, Kentucky. And my protest sign says enough is enough. We just had today outside Atlanta another school shooting. We have seen this movie one time too many. As not too long ago, we had one in Marshall County, not too far from here, and 20-some odd years ago in Heath High School, and over in Nashville, 2 hours from us, a couple of years ago. Until we deal with the issue of gun violence and the availability and access to guns, sadly, we're going to see this movie time and again, and none of us is safe. But enough is enough. It's time for action. Thoughts and prayers just won't cut it.
Yeah, for sure. Policy and action. Let's get it done, people. You know who could get some of that done? That would be some of the folks running for office right now. So yeah, it's clearly if that's an issue you care about, show up in November, and it's an issue we all do care about. So let's show up. All right. I think we had some technical difficulties, but now she's back. Kimberly, are you there?
You're here.
Yes, I am here. How are you doing? I'm coming to you live from Louisville, Kentucky, Jefferson County. And my protest sign says today, I can't help it, she's my soror, # vote Kamala.
Woo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know who got more done on gun safety than any recent legislators and leaders? That would be the Biden-Harris administration. And she was one of the leaders on that effort. So good stuff for sure. More to be done. Absolutely. So proud of your soror. And that means she'll come on the show, right, Kimberly?
Yeah, of course. I can ask. At least that's a 50% chance. If I don't ask, then it's 100% no, right?
Yeah. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So all right, so let's we'll bank on that for sure. All right, let's move into news of the week. Some important stories to touch base on, and turning to the distinguished Dr. Clardy, who's got some firsthand interactions with these offices to share the story about what's going on with higher education in Kentucky right now.
This is the beginnings of a national tragedy. We're starting to see now the shuttering of offices of diversity, equity, and inclusion. We began to see it start with our flagship university, the University of Kentucky, and now we're starting to see it with Northern Kentucky University. We are hearing these stories where Republican legislators are attacking diversity programs. This has been going on a long time. They've considered it reverse racism. I don't see where it is. To make up for those decades and centuries of disparities in higher education, the goal is not to promote tokenism. The goal is not to take a benefit away from anyone else. The goal is simply this: to make access to higher education available to all students without regard to race, creed, color, gender, national origin, sexual orientation, or ability. And what we're starting to see here in this Commonwealth is the beginnings of a national tragedy, where we're seeing these types of programs being phased out completely throughout the United States. It is a sad day for higher education. It's a sad day for this Commonwealth.
Yeah, it's a little confusing too, right? Because the bills that they had filed in the last session to kind of force these offices to shutter did not in fact pass, right? So there's not a legal requirement that these colleges do this,
right?
But clearly, the GOP kind of made its wishes known, I suppose, huh?
And they're going to try again. I mean, they may have gone, hit the pause button with regard to this legislation, but I assure you, when the General Assembly comes back, they're going to keep trying until they get rid of them all.
And it's so just kind of, I don't know, duplicitous or just gross. I don't know, because UK, the president showed up and was in Frankfurt talking about how important diversity was to the mission of the institution. And then despite the fact that people rallied and blocked these bad bills from, because it's not like this body hesitates to pass bad bills. It took a lot of really hard work to keep these things from passing, and then they apparently won anyway, right? So just a little disgusting, to say the least, I think. And it's easy for me to say. I don't work at these institutions. I'm not,
Aaron, we recognize in higher education that this country is becoming a very diverse country, perhaps more diverse today in the 21st century than it ever has been. We've always been a big, giant melting pot and an amalgamation of different groups of people. However, historically, a lot of those groups have been frozen out by law and by practice. What these offices try to do is to try to level the playing field. We're not trying to disenfranchise or reverse discriminate against anybody. That's not the goal. That's not the intention. And even the courts have said you can't do that. But the sad thing that bothers me is how this is going to hurt enrollment and applications to our Commonwealth colleges and universities. Certainly industries are looking at this, hiring organizations are looking at this, accreditation agencies are looking at this. This could have some harmful effects across the board if we're not careful.
Yeah. Kimberly?
I just want to say basically that I knew it was going to come to this. I knew it. We had our time, you know, all the companies had their great commercials and everything, Black Lives Matter, during the civil rights movement of 2020. And I knew that they would just get really fed up and tired and take it away. And UK of all universities should not be taking away diversity. It still has a long-standing history of blatant discrimination. When you talk about the greats of Joe B. Hall and so on and so forth, and even before him, the coach. So when it comes to universities, that's not the one that should have taken away diversity. However, it's happening in corporate America right now. Google has fired everyone in their DE&I departments. There's wind that Brown-Forman may start to take away the diversity departments. There's a lot of talk that a lot of companies are going to start doing that. So the playing field is not going to be what you want to call fair. I have a meme and I'll bring it to you later on, Aaron, maybe for another episode, but it has two men getting ready to run a race. The black man, he was at the starting gate and he had like a ball and chain around his ankle. Then there was like that thing that they use in the Olympics that you have to jump over. And then it was all of this debris in the road for them to have the same opportunities as our lighter skinned brothers and sisters. So taking away diversity is going to be quite impactful and no longer helpful, because you have people like my daughter that are not going to come back to Kentucky to live. But now she's not even coming back to America.
Yeah, I think it does. It reflects poorly on our state and our Commonwealth, obviously, to see kind of flagship universities taking this path of least resistance. I'll just say it, cowardice. And I think, as you pointed out so well, Kimberly, there's a long legacy that these folks should be addressing, and those offices, I think, were kind of steps towards supporting the entirety of their student body, and the folks who started on third, and think that their single got them a home run, right? Versus the folks who, as you pointed out, Kimberly, have just more obstacles, right? We got to support these folks, and our Commonwealth does better when we all do better. So it's like I said earlier, I think it's just gross. But
guess what though?
What's that?
I gotta say it.
I don't know.
Notice how the University of Louisville hasn't even touched that subject.
We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, but that's my alma mater. Okay, all right. So
but if they even try,
I just want everybody to know that U of L has not said anything, and I doubt most seriously that they will get rid of their diversity efforts at the University of Louisville.
All right, we will watch this space. But yes, at this point, certainly you are 100% factual and accurate. All right. So story number 2. This story comes to us from the Kentucky Lantern via our friends at Forward Kentucky. And it is about Danny Carroll, who at one point I accused of watching the show, but he's a Republican senator from Benton, Kentucky. And he has stood up a number of times to really call out the GOP, his GOP, to put their money where their mouths are in terms of, bashing the state for not doing the right things and then not funding the state to do any better, right? He gets that there's a bit of a disconnect there. So he is continuing on his ability to add some accountability and consistency for his own party, and he slammed the Kentucky legislature last week for not funding his proposal to spend $22 million on a special mental health juvenile detention facility. So he filed a bill during the 2024 session, which would have created a process to test and treat minors with serious mental health issues in the Department of Juvenile Justice. The bill passed the Senate, and then died in the House, and he called them out, basically. So, he said, at the death of the bill, that we as the legislature have pointed fingers at DJJ, Department of Juvenile Justice, pointed fingers at the governor, and now we have some culpability in this problem because we had the opportunity to finish this out. We had the opportunity to establish a mental health detention center to treat the most severe kids that are detained, and we didn't do it. We let the bill die. We have a crisis in this Commonwealth that everyone agreed was a crisis until it came time to pay for it. Then all of a sudden, it wasn't a crisis. Of course, if they had spent that money, that would have been harder for them to then, hit the numbers they were supposed to hit, which of course we covered this last week, where how they cooked the books to make sure they could get away with their income tax cut. So yeah, definitely, the way this is set up, there's trouble brewing. Things are not doing well for their juvenile justice program in the state of Kentucky, and that's too bad. A new state law, though, is going to allow more minors to be tried as adults, which will increase the number of juveniles actually in detention. And despite them being tried as adults, they can't be held as adults, right? So they'll need to be in the DJJ program and process, which means they're going to need more resources, not fewer. So Senator Danny Carroll, hats off to you. I'm sorry you couldn't get your bill passed through your legislature, your friends in the legislature. He also had $90 million for building 2 all-female regional detention facilities. And of course, what we had initially targeted is that he was advocating to spend money to support the child care cliff, the fiscal cliff that is approaching child care in the state of Kentucky. And he, heard the crisis, heard the calls for action and calls for help, and wanted to fund that. So, this has become a political football for sure. The GOP really likes to beat up Andy Beshear because it's under his cabinet. But, the funding is definitely not in his hands, and his budget called for a lot more than what the GOP was willing to send his way. So really a problem on a lot of levels. But, who pays the price? It's kids. It's troubled kids. And that's, shameful, and it's disrespectful, and it's a problem for the future of our Commonwealth for sure. I don't know, either of you guys have thoughts about that story. And is Danny Carroll really a Republican, or is he we think maybe he's just a closet Democrat?
Well, honestly, I disagree.
I wouldn't say it, is that Dr. Clardy? You went first last time, sir.
Okay, go ahead. Go right ahead. Knock it out. Knock it out the park. Because we're more likely going to agree.
You and Aaron would just leave me out. Okay, thank you. So let us not forget that the Department of Justice was in the state of Kentucky for almost 3 years conducting their investigations. Have we as a state violated any laws or civil rights because of mental health? Well, of course, it came back that Jefferson County, had the worst score as far as we have violated the civil rights of those because we have not treated them accordingly with mental illnesses. We have not offered everything that we were supposed to. We haven't followed up. We haven't seemed compassionate. And Louisville is known to be a compassionate city. And that is something that our mayors always quote. It's a compassionate city. So where's the compassion? I just feel that As far as our young people are concerned, it almost appears like they come out of the womb angry.
Mm.
And you're like, angry for what? Just angry for no reason. And then you see a lot of parents that really don't know how to deal with their children. And it's not like we can throw them all in juvenile detention. And we don't even have that in Louisville. We don't have a juvenile detention like we used to. So these kids are running wild around here. But I guarantee you over 85% of them have severe mental health issues that are not being addressed. And they are undiagnosed and unmedicated.
Right.
Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done for sure.
I completely agree with you, completely. And, you know, as I was about to say, I disagree with Danny Carroll 98.5% of the time on most issues, no question. But on this one, he's spot on. And it's a shame and a tragedy that Kentucky's Republican Party would much rather toe this 19th century type of thinking to toe this line in 2024 when we have these disparities, when we have these issues, and this is an awakening giant. This is going to become a larger problem unless it's dealt with. And seriously, we're going to see crime spike completely out of control unless this is addressed. And if the Republican Party, as they claim to be the party of law and order, this is where it starts with that type of preventative care. And it's a shame that you only got one Republican that's actually beating the drums on this. I wish Senator Carroll well on this. And I challenge my senator, Jason Howell, to get off his butt and do something about it.
Yeah. Speaking of legislators and who need to do something maybe different than they're doing now, Kimberly, can you answer us a few questions? What is going on with the Louisville delegation? They are just trouble. Each and every, like, not all of them, but many of them. And what is going on? Can you tell us?
Oh, wow, wow, wow. It always comes back to Jefferson County, doesn't it? Well, they're calling them the big three. Okay, so you have my girl that's all that and a bag of chips, very well regarded and beloved, and that would be State Representative Nima Konkari. I know her personally. She's really got a dedicated spirit, a good heart. However, I guess we forgot to cross all the T's and dot all the I's because she had a neighbor, someone that she knew in the community, to sign her paperwork, as you have to. When you do your paperwork, your registration to run for state representative, it is a $200 fee, and you must have someone else to sign. And they have to be of the same party as you. So Miss Nima, State Representative Nima Konkari, happened to get a person to sign the paperwork who was actually a registered Republican. So it went to the courts, and the courts were like, okay, Nima can run. Then it went up to the higher court, and they said Nima can't run. So she's working very diligently at this time to try to make it so that she can be a write-in on the ballot. Because she is a good state representative. And I think the other choice would it be Horlander? I could be saying the wrong thing, but I think it's Horlander. So the second issue, nice young man. He was one of the shooting stars. He ran against an incumbent that really people frown upon. You know, I don't know all the time you're supposed to run against the incumbent. I think you can if they're doing absolutely nothing. But for respect's sake and things like that. We don't just come up and try to knock an incumbent out. However, he did that. He beats to his own drum, and apparently he beats to his own text, because it has been brought to everyone's attention at this point, and that would be State Representative Daniel Grossberg. The last time I saw Daniel, we were at the Wendell Ford dinner at the Young Dems after party, and he was doing his Michael Jackson dances. I always thought he was really, a hoot, right? Really fun to be around. But apparently he's been texting women at 1 o'clock in the morning, actually harassing. Okay, I didn't want to say the word. They'll ding us on YouTube.
Oh boy.
And then they went all the way back to his university years, and there were some problems even back then of women thinking that he was, quote, these are their words, not mine, that he was creepy, weird, and things of this nature. And then the last one. Can I just do my head? I'm from Jefferson County. I just bow my head down like in shame, 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 shame. State Representative Beverly Chester Burton, who represents the 44th District, which I am also in the 44th District. And years ago, she was the mayor of Shively, and she was caught for a DUI, drunk and driving. Now she was able to get out of that, although she never, ever apologized to her constituency. Some kind of way with Joni Jenkins, she became a state representative. She took the seat that Joni Jenkins had. And she has gotten caught again last week for a DUI. Officers were already out. They were finishing a call. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning. They saw her turning into a lane with oncoming traffic. Thank God it was at 1 o'clock in the morning and it wasn't as much traffic and people there, but there was another vehicle coming that had to swerve to be able to continue driving. Then she went and finally turned and got into the right lane and stopped her car right in the middle lane, just stopped it. So that's when the police did what they did, and she was asking, she wanted to speak to the chief. We think it's the chief of police. They would not allow her to call the chief. She had not talked to the chief before, during, or after this unfortunate situation. So she also said that she got away with it last time. She'll be getting away with it this time as well, which honestly, they said she was staggering, trying to get into the car in the front seat. She couldn't get into the car. They wouldn't let her. And then she tried to get in the back seat. She was almost falling. And I mean, I don't know. What do the people say? She was sloshed, in other words. So we're all wondering, because I'm on the executive committee of the Louisville Jefferson County Democratic Party, and we did construct a statement concerning Daniel Grossberg. He is, as far as Louisville Jefferson County is concerned, he is not allowed to attend any of our functions, be on any of our calls, come to none of our meetings. And when things like this happen with state representatives, just for the viewers and listeners that may not know this, first it's going to go to the caucus, and they're going to make recommendations, and they're going to make a plan of what needs to be done. And then a lot of times they ask Jefferson County and Fayette, being the largest counties, a lot of times our Democratic Party will also get with them. So we're just wondering right now, Morgan Eves, who's the executive director of the KDP, Kentucky Democratic Party, has made statements on all of these, and everybody is just as perplexed as I am. Everyone in Jefferson County feels shamed right now, because 3 of the problems that are coming out of Frankfort right here in Louisville. We could lose these seats. Man, what are they doing?
Yeah, it's a problem. It's not a good look. You are showing yeah, it is like, and we've had Nima on this show. We're actually gonna have Nima on this show next week to talk about her New Americans initiative. We'll probably have a question or two about this situation too. And we've had Daniel on the show as well. And I guess, yeah, the Grossberg, that is not just not his last name. It's like his behavior. That is a problem. All the folks who've come out of the woodwork to say that he's had a lot of questionable behavior through the years. That's really just unfortunate and gross. Again, like that's the theme of the episode, I guess.
They even said that the president of the Kentucky Young Dems, which is Allison Wiseman, she lives right here in Jefferson County as well. The Kentucky Young Dems were the first to make their statement that he cannot be involved with the Kentucky Young Dems. And then come to find out that some of the young ladies in the Young Dems had been, harassed by Representative Grossberg.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm proud that our party is not going to just pretend it's not happening, right? And I think Andy put out a statement about Grossberg, and I haven't heard about, and Nima, what you're supposed to say, just you should do your diligence a little bit better. I don't know, it's a filing problem. It's not like her voters don't like her or that she couldn't find somebody to, fill out the form with her. But yeah, so, that one I think is a little less troubling than the other two. And absolutely, I think that your representative should be accountable to her constituents and kind of step up and show some, yeah. Go ahead.
But isn't that the difference between Democrats and Republicans? We hold our people accountable. We are calling them out on this show. Whereas Republicans are willing to wink and nod and nominate a man who was accused of sexual assault, accused of rape in a civil case, and someone who was not only an insurrectionist, but has a 34-count prosecution, a conviction against him, and pending charges. The difference between Democrats and Republicans is, yeah, if you mess up, we're going to bust you out. We're going to call you out. We're going to alienate you. But we're not going to nominate you for president. That's what the Republicans have done.
Yeah, no, for sure. We're not a cult of personality. None of these people are, above their, the role that the voters have put them into, right? Who's in charge? Who are the heroes in these stories? It's the voters. It's not the lawmakers. We like to have lawmakers that represent us well and who, represent the best of our intentions. But yeah, it's the voters. It's not about the lawmakers, So at any rate, I think it's terribly unfortunate that our biggest blue dot, our powerhouse for our opportunities to, win statewide, really hinge on Louisville being an incredibly powerful overperformer in terms of elections. But yeah, y'all need to get your act together.
Big time.
Why don't you just tell the truth, Aaron?
All right. So speaking of getting our act together, we are now moving to our interview. We're a few minutes late. I'm sorry about that. But that was just, we had to talk about that. But yeah, so we are thrilled to be joined by Adam Moore, who is working to flip one of the most competitive districts in the state. It's here in Lexington, and I'm very excited to have him back on the show. He's been campaigning hard since I first met him, and that's been a while. So, Adam, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing this fair evening?
I'm good. Am I allowed to say I'm starting to get a little tired because of all that hard work? But I'm good.
Fair enough. Yeah, no, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And we are all keeping our fingers crossed that it's not, a freight train attached to Thomas Jefferson's weird name.
Are we doing the weird thing on Kentucky politics too?
Why not? I think it works. So you were running against you know, one of the, you know, the biggest gingers in the legislature, what's his name?
Killian Timoney.
Killian Timoney, right? So he was, you know, in one of the toughest seats, right? It's a seat that, you know, Andy won by, I think, a fair amount. He was one of the most vulnerable Republicans, and he kind of acted like it, right? You know, but you know, he didn't survive his primary, so he is now, you know, he's not your competitor. You are running against Thomas Jefferson, not the original one, obviously, because that would, how could you vote for a dead man? But yeah, the guy's name is Thomas Jefferson. Is it legally, or was it just like historically, or has it always been? Do we know?
Apparently, he is a third generation Thomas Jefferson, but he has gone by Tom his whole life. And if you actually go to like his campaign stuff, it's like Thomas Jefferson or something. So so he is for most of his life been Tom Jefferson, but now due to his the good namesake, he's going by his given name of Thomas.
Gotcha. And he's no relation to Thomas Jefferson.
Not that I've heard tell, and not that I've seen him claim.
All right. So, but tell us about you. You're way more interesting. Well, you know, you are interesting. You got a wonderful bio, like one of the coolest. Like, yeah, of course we should have Adam more in the legislature because he's done so many cool things, learning about our country, different perspectives of our country, right? So, tell us a bit about yourself.
Yeah, I think the bio sounds cooler, and I filled out one of these things for a questionnaire the other day, and it sounds cool. So I'm from Frankfort originally. I'm from down the road. I'm here in Kentucky. Went to school at Murray State, where I actually had Dr. Clardy as one of my professors when I graduated there with a degree in international affairs. I went to American University in D.C. for my master's, and I had my first political job when I interned for Senator McConnell. Now nobody likes him anymore, Republican or Democrat. Nobody likes Mitch, which is funny. You say that at the door and everyone boos at you. But I interned for Senator McConnell, and I disliked it so much that I had to find a different way to serve. That's when I enlisted in the Army. So I enlisted in the Army during that internship. That internship went almost up to Christmas, and I shipped off to basic training January 3rd, so right afterwards. Served in the Army, did 2 deployments, one to the Horn of Africa and one to Afghanistan. Came back to Capitol Hill in D.C. Actually worked for about 2 years for Congressman Ed Whitfield from Western Kentucky. Of course, having gone to Murray, I actually knew several Murray people up there on my staff on his staff as well. And it was much more rewarding than serving in McConnell's office. I actually got to work on military affairs, foreign affairs, veterans issues, and actually got to meet with constituents. I had to have phone calls with constituents, write letters with them. It was much more rewarding to serve Kentuckians in that regard than to be in Mitch's office. But anyway, I've left politics and I'm a health and fitness coach now. But all those things that I've done, that's great filler for the resume. But the honest truth is the thing that's preparing me the most to go and be effective in Frankfort is just being a dad and like being a small business owner and a family man here in Kentucky. Schools matter, neighborhoods matter, supporting our Kentucky homegrown small businesses matter. All that other stuff is great on the resume, and I'm great for all the experiences that I got to have and the service I've been able to do so far. But honestly, just being someone from Kentucky, living in Kentucky, who cares about this state, who's living here with his family, that is the most important thing. And that's what's going to be on my mind day in and day out when I am in Frankfort.
And then, so, you know, people get very focused on how you characterize your military experience. Are you a combat veteran? So you deployed in Afghanistan. Does that mean you were a combat veteran?
Yeah. So now people like to accuse someone else of being less of a veteran than I was or less of a veteran than you are. First off, anyone who raises their hand and is willing to put that flag on their shoulder, like that's more than 95% of people will ever do. So even if you never deployed overseas, like good job for at least putting yourself in that position. I deployed overseas twice. They both were considered hazard duty. But I'll be honest, the Horn of Africa one was not very hazardous. Let's just be real. I'm glad I did it, and you're never without risk, but that was a more a less hazardous experience. But Afghanistan was Afghanistan. Whether it was me on the side of a mountain or me in my vehicle was targeted with RPG fire, small arms fire, IEDs. And I've got some tinnitus and stuff like that, but I've never really been banged up. I'm someone who's able to walk away relatively unscathed. Now I get all my health care provided by the VA Medical Center, so I'm excited for that. I'm glad that they provide that for me. But yeah, it was the things that you imagine when you think someone went to Afghanistan. It was all that stuff.
Yeah. So fair to say you're a combat veteran. You served your nation 2 deployments. Thank you for your service. And, you know, I certainly haven't served. I have a lot of family members that did. But, you know, it's critically important for our nation to have folks who are willing to raise their hand, as you say. And I know that Kimberly's daughter has done a lot of military service. And so, you know, we very much appreciate those who are willing to, you know, support our nation in that very real, tangible, dangerous way. But you know, I think politics is a whole different dangerous terrain, right? So I don't know if a lot of the training, like, you know, translates, but it does seem like, man, this is a crazy time to be in politics, right? So we've got a lot of partisanship. We've got, you know, people driving their trucks around with big flags. Most of them say Trump. I think some of them now say Kamala, but you know, it's like it's people are putting their like leader ahead of their party. They're putting their leader ahead of their own interests. Often, you know, they're willing to ignore the fact that they're liars and that they aren't working for, you know, all of our best interest. And they're just serving themselves. Like, what about this time prompted you to go, you know what? I'm going to get into the mix. I'm going to pick that fight and join that melee.
I think going to DC at a young age, there was that idea that maybe I would want to get into electoral politics. And then like the McConnell experience turned me off to it. Joining the Army, getting married, I was settled into a normal life, being a project manager and then a fitness coach. But nobody ran for the seat in 2022. And by the time, you know, that happened, that really sparked me. I started to get involved locally with some civic organizations between KFTC, local chapter of Moms. And then I ended up getting on the Lexington Commission for Veterans Affairs. So I was starting to step up locally and take action in kind of nonpartisan politics ways, just ways of trying to improve people's lives and make sure that people in Kentucky are taken care of. So when no one ran in what like you just already described, Aaron, as a very competitive district, as a very purple district, you know, that frustrated me. If we're a democracy, we need to have a choice. Voters deserve to have a choice. Now, you might be in an R+50 district or a D+50 district, but there should still be someone on both sides to run and give people that option, that choice to have that outlet. So I wanted to at least consider running. My wife said, okay. And then I got to know Karen Summers at the local party, and my friends were like, Adam, you're the best person for it. You should totally do it. I got my first ever donation like in January of 2023, like $5 from my best friend. They're like, you should totally do this. But then I hope
that was recurring. I really hope that was a recurring donation.
He donated a little bit more later, but that was the first kind of buy-in and into the campaign. But no, and then it became more real. And then I was real glad that I did. 2 things I say about me against Tom Jefferson. Number one, I'm glad that he's running in a purple district. If he was running in a red district, like he could win, and that would be terrible. So I'm glad that he's running here where he can get beat. And I'm glad that someone like me is running against him, someone who is from here, someone who grew up on the tobacco fields, who served in the Army, who looks like, talks like most people who live here. I'm not what a lot of people imagine when they think of a Democrat. And that's great because Democrats are all kinds of people, including me from Tobacco Road in Franklin County. So I'm really glad that I think Tom's in a district that he can get beat. And I think I'm the perfect person to beat him in this district.
So you said mom, so we know that you're for, you know, common sense, gun safety legislation. They've endorsed you. I just looked at, you know, the survey that you filled out for us. Thank you. I don't want to like break any news right now, but things look good. Things look favorable for that endorsement. And then, what's the contrast between you and Thomas Jefferson, not the founding father?
Not the founding father. The original Thomas Jefferson, he still had his outfits and mine were very different, the powdered wigs and everything. But this Tom, we have our own differences. It's hard to really see the differences for a few reasons. Number one, he literally pulled the issues page off of his website. So you literally can't even see what he stands for anymore. He turned down the primary interview with the Herald Leader Edit Board. He turned down the primary League of Women Voters Forum with Gillian Timney. He turned down the KEEP, which is the Kentucky Equine Education Program, basically horse people. He turned down the invite to their Q&A with me. He refused to come to the state retirees, public retirees luncheon with me. He's someone who refuses to take any questions or anything. He is running on his name and the R that's next to it. It's pathetic for democracy. But what he used to have an issues page. So I can say what he really believes, but what he's hiding. He wants there to be no gun-free zones, Gun-free zones are things that are not protected by federal law. So federal law protects our airports and mass transit centers. Federal law protects our public schools up to 12th grade. So certain things are covered by federal law. Now, if a movie theater wants to have a no guns allowed in it on opening night, that's fine. If a church wants to have no weapons allowed, that's fine. If Rupp Arena wants to have no firearms allowed on the premises, that's fine. Places can establish themselves as gun-free zones. He wants to get rid of that in Kentucky. I mean, does anyone feel safer that way? He said he wants to expand concealed carry. Right now, Kentucky has permitless concealed carry for anyone over 21 who's able to own a firearm. So I don't even know what he's getting at there. So I'm someone who respects the Second Amendment, but also think that we should have our children should be safe. And so I think the Second Amendment, we need to uphold it. At the same time, these are some radical ideas to not just enforce existing gun laws, which is what I'm for. He wants to loosen gun laws that we already have. So that's one thing from his original platform. Number two, school choice. If people have heard about this bill, the amendment to the Constitution, Amendment 2 on the ballot, school choice is a great phrase. Every parent should have school choice in Kentucky. Andrew and I do. We send Remy to Wilmore Crossing Academy, which is a non-public school. That is our school choice. We as parents have chosen where Remy is going, and we decided to pay for that. And if we need help paying for it, we can apply for financial aid and we can apply for scholarships. But Tom wants to amend the Constitution to send public dollars to private schools. And I'm against that. That is welfare for people who, who don't need it. What's the third thing? There's a third thing that I remember had really jumped off at me as well. But now that he's taken his issues page down, I've kind of forgotten it. Oh, 0 exceptions for reproductive rights and reproductive justice. No exceptions for rape, no exceptions for incest, no exceptions for fetal viability. Nobody's cheering abortion. Nobody's like, yay, abortion. There are medical procedures that are necessary. And Tom Jefferson does not realize that. I mean, I think the stats are 1 out of every 4 pregnancies results in a miscarriage, and approximately half of miscarriages require DNC. That's 1/8 of all pregnancies. And that is a procedure that you cannot legally have in the state of Kentucky right now. 1/8 of pregnancies in the state of Kentucky require a procedure that is not legal here. And Tom doesn't care.
Yeah. So I'm going to throw it to my co-hosts, see if they have any questions for you. I feel like I've kind of monopolized the conversation. So Kimberly or Dr. Clardy, anything you want to ask Adam? Dr. Clardy knows that if he starts talking, then Kimberly's going to hold it against him. Kimberly, you're muted. So
Kimberly needs to go first because I got to talk to Dr. Clardy the first time I was here.
That's right.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Hey, Adam Moore. Nice to meet you today, and thank you for your service. One quick question, though. You said the Horn of Africa. Were you at Camp Lemonnier?
Yes, we called it Camp Lemonnier because we don't know how to pronounce French words, but that's exactly right.
My daughter was deployed there, as Afghanistan.
There are several people who make their way through there. There are 2 other people I know of who are with me on the Lexington Commission on Veterans Affairs who've also served at Lemonnier in Djibouti.
So I do understand that. And I do, coming from a military family myself, Navy brat. My daughter is Air Force, however, and my ex-husband was Army, right out there at Fort Knox. But I think that the military lends a lot of leadership and guidance and organization and time management skills. I think that the military also helps you with your listening skills. I think also being in the military makes you really a little bit more prepared for the world than some of us civilians. So when you get there in Frankfurt, tell me, just curious to know, what are some of the things that you really want to work on? Like day one, what's your day one thing?
Day one thing, I want to be a founding member of a Veterans Caucus in Frankfurt. There is no Veterans Caucus in our capital. So there is the VMAP committee, the Veterans, Military, and Public Protection Committee. But there is no avenue to get outside of the rigid committee structure for people from both parties, from both chambers to get together and actually address what do our veteran communities need. So day one, I want to start getting the paperwork moving on being a founding member and hopefully a leading member of a Veterans Caucus in Frankfurt. And then I don't want to just think about looking at a lens of veterans. I want to look at everyone who serves. And that is connecting with our veterans, but also our service, our first responders, to services available to them here in Kentucky. That's largely what our group on the Lexington Commission of Veterans Affairs does. It is not to create new services. It's not to use government funds to create new services. It is what is out there and how do we get our existing veteran community to those things. And that's what government should do. The government should help people without having to, just write checks. And that's what we have an opportunity to do statewide if we can get a veterans caucus going and get things like that. But we can do it not just for our veterans. We also do it for our first responders because it's important that our state serves the people who have served us.
That's great. That's good. Good day one agenda for sure. And it's realistic, right? Because you are still going to, no matter what happens, you're going to be walking into you will be a minority in that body. And I think having a realistic sense of what you can accomplish and how you can go about doing it, I think is really important for your expectations.
Right. I'm sure that a lot of people want to hear me talk about reproductive rights and public schools. And I talk a lot about universal pre-K. I talk a lot about our teachers should get paid the same thing the teachers in our neighboring states should. And those are all true. I've got to think about what I can do. When I come in, we're probably going to flip 5 seats this year. So what can I do as the 25th Democrat that actually might make some progress for us? And that's something that I can do because there won't be a D or an R hung on to veterans and first responders. That should just be an all of us issue. So if I can do that, that shows I'm also someone who's willing to look past just partisan labels and focus on Kentuckians and get stuff done.
That's awesome. And if you've got a really good idea for a bill, find a Republican that you trust to kind of take it forward and give it to them. Because, I just think that you're at a situation where, the most effective lawmakers on the Democratic side of the aisle are the ones who don't have pride of ownership and don't need to see their names on stuff, but are willing to build some good relationships to move common sense solutions.
Maybe Killian can move to a different district, then I'll get Killian to co-sign on some of my bills if he comes in from somewhere else.
Yeah. Dr. Clardy, any points of question?
My question, and Adam, definitely thank you for your service to our country and the fact that you're willing to put your name out there to serve us yet again. That is very admirable. Could you say a little bit more about your opposition? It seems to me what I picked up on, your opposition to Amendment 2 that's being voted on this November.
Mm-hmm. My opposition to Amendment 2 or my opposition as far as my opponent? Sorry, can you clarify that?
Well, just your views on Amendment 2. That's you kind of alluded to that, but yeah. I just want to be very clear. Are you outright opposing Amendment 2? Yes, I am. So for those if you listen to this show, if you listen to Kernels of Truth podcast, you probably already know what Amendment 2 is. But Amendment 2 amends the Constitution to allow the legislature to assign public funds to things that are not in the common school system or to non-public schools. And so we're talking about whether that is to charter schools or to unaccountable private schools, but somewhere that is not a public school, somewhere that can turn children away, someone that can not accept children, somewhere that can say that we're not going to provide for those who have special needs. And those schools where parents couldn't afford it anyway. We look at St. X in Louisville has a $28,000 tuition, a $4,700 stipend or voucher is not going to help that family to get into St. X. St. X already has scholarships available, and they also already have financial aid available. And so this whole thing that now kids who are from without can now afford these other things is just not factual, because these schools, like here in Lexington, we have SARE, we have the Lexington School, we have Lexington Catholic, Lexington Christian. Each of those ones I've named have great reputations, and they all have scholarships, and they all have financial aid. And so having a voucher program that goes to those schools does not do anything to help get more kids into those schools. I'm a simple dollars and cents guy. One of two things has to happen. If you're going to pay kids to go to private schools, either you're taking money out of public schools to balance the cost, or you're not taking money out of public schools and you're exploding the state budget. And I think the projection is something like in its first year, it would cost Kentucky $189 million. I think that's it based on like surrounding states. And if they use the same system as Arizona, I think they say it'll cost like $1 billion in the first year. It's wild. Very interesting.
Super expensive. And as we have seen and pointed out in this show this week, last week, many times in the past, the GOP does not want to fund things that the government needs. Right, whether it's the juvenile justice program reforms, whether it's the child care fiscal cliff that's facing child care in our commonwealth. They do not want to write a check for any of those things. So the idea that you're going to explode the budget and that they're going to actually meet the needs. No, they are going to cut other things, right?
Well, how much are we going to be losing to the Safer Kentucky Act that they passed this last year? That we don't have.
We don't really know because the fiscal note was not actually shared. If folks remember
Exactly.
last week's show, the fiscal note for that measure was not shared, right? So yeah, it's these guys are irresponsible. They're writing checks that they can't cash.
Mm-hmm.
They are, So I hope you can get there and bring some sanity and common sense approach to what's going on in the legislature. But how can people help you? What do you need to get there? How are you feeling about the campaign at this point? Obviously, Thomas Jefferson does not want to talk about you or talk to you or provide an opportunity to contrast you versus him. But what can people do to help get you across the finish line?
I feel good. There's a person on Twitter, Blue Arrow Maps. I don't know if any of y'all know, but he does the data and he does races and things like that. He does things around the country, but he does a lot of Kentucky things. But apparently I'm the favorite in this race. Apparently we're picked to win this one. Don't believe the polls, guys. It is going to be a knockdown, drag-out fight. It's going to be a 51-49 race, probably one way or another. But all that to say, it's going to be a very close race. I would say that we've done a good job about trying to raise money. I think we have enough money raised that we can put mailers in everyone's mailbox. We can put digital ads onto ESPN.com and onto your Facebook feeds, and we can put them onto your pre-roll on YouTube and on Hulu. We've raised enough money for that. I want people to help us raise more money to do a couple more things. I want a paid canvassing campaign. We have our volunteers, and I'm really glad that our volunteers are helping us knock doors. We've knocked around 6,700 doors so far. I would love, with a paid canvassing campaign, to help us hit 15,000 by the time we're done. I'd like to go from 6,700 to 15,000. So I would ask people to help donate so we can get more people out to the doors, because anyone who studied political science knows that the number one thing to help turn out for your candidate is to have a personal conversation with them. So I want money for that, and I would love to be able to be on TV and radio as well, actual broadcast. So if we can raise money to go have a paid door knocking campaign and to be able to afford broadcast TV and broadcast radio here in Lexington, I think that's going to be a game changer, because everyone's going to be watching college football all Saturday and NFL games all Sunday, and we can afford the TV. We're going to get all kinds of eyeballs on this campaign. It's going to be great.
All right. And I put a link in the chat. KY deserves more, MOORE.com. Check it out. Make your donation there. I'm sure it's probably a secure ActBlue website that it's linked to. So Adam, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks for throwing your hat in the ring. Thank you for your service. Thanks for taking on Jefferson. And I think it's going to be a race to watch. As you said, flipping 5 seats would be great. It'd be a start for sure. And putting the Democrats into a better position. Maybe if we squint, we can get to a point where we can actually uphold a veto. Something important for our state for sure, to take advantage of Andy's leadership and folks like Adam who are willing to provide common sense leadership for our Commonwealth. Awesome. Thanks so much, Adam.
Thank you all so much for having me on again. I really appreciate it.
For sure. All right. So we're going to close out the show. We're going to do a call to action, then the close. So I think you can go ahead and let's see. The call to action is going to be very similar to one that we did last week, because we are very laser focused on the elections. It's really important because, it's 62 days, folks. If you are not putting like a volunteer shift a week between now and November 5th, like, what do you really care? Do you really care about saving our democracy? Do you really care about getting Andy some friends he can work with in Frankfurt? Look, I am not, it's kernels of truth, people, right? So we're not going to sell you a bill of goods on this one. I don't know that the enthusiasm that we're all showing for Kamala and Walz is going to carry the day in Kentucky. But there are some very, very important things on the ballot that we can, in fact, win for sure.
That's right.
So Amendment 2, we can fight Amendment 2. We just talked about it a bunch. We talk about it pretty much every episode. As Adam noted, if you're paying attention to this show, listen to our podcast, you know what Amendment 2 is and why we don't like it, right? Public dollars should be for public schools. period, not unaccountable private schools. And if you're for more folks in Frankfort, stand against Kentucky's outrageous abortion restrictions, to fight for reproductive justice. We need folks like Adam Moore. We need folks to, we need to keep Sherilyn Stevenson. And we want you to sign up with us on our direct voter contact campaign. Help us get the word out about those candidates, about those issues. We're doing a candidate survey right now, so we can do some candidate endorsements. And I think there are some great folks we can endorse, that we can knock on doors in those districts with a kind of nonpartisan message. So we're not the Democratic Party, folks. We're an independent, nonprofit C4 organization. That means we're not Democrats. We are, most of us are Democrats, but that's not what our organization is organized around. We're supporting issues that matter, and that matter at the doors as well, which I think is a whole different conversation than somebody who's just coming around for a campaign, for a candidate, for a party. So it's different. It lands differently, and you can open up a lot of different conversations by doing that work with Progress Kentucky. I have firsthand experience, and I think it's just a very positive interaction. So I hope you can join us. We're looking at a kickoff event soon. Go to our website, sign up. We'll let you know when that event is and when the canvassing starts. But we hope you can join us. All right, Kimberly, can you close us out?
I sure can, Aaron.
Fantastic.
Once again, a great night and a great show. I just always learn something, and I think it's very beneficial to have this type of information. So please, everyone, make sure that you are sharing this particular video and get the word out. This is information, and it's a need to know type of information. However, Progress Kentucky is a nonprofit organization registered with the Kentucky Secretary of State and organized as a 501c4, as Aaron had mentioned previously. We are affiliated with the Indivisible Project and also Commonwealth Alliance for Voter Engagement, otherwise known as CAVE. And also we are proud members of the Forward Kentucky Network. Progress Kentucky's goal is to educate, organize, increase voter turnout, and advance a progressive agenda through civic engagement. Next week's show will feature another great guest. Make sure to join us. And production of episode 175 was by our own wonderful and great Annabel Nagel. So Nate Orshan wrote the song that you hear in the show in the beginning and the end. And you can find more information about his music at natosongs.com. And that's NATO songs.com. And if you ever are not allowed, or time passes you by and you're not able to be on here at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for the live, you can always go back on our Progress Kentucky Facebook page, or you can go to YouTube. You can also do the audio podcast, and our show notes are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and wherever you get your podcast. And if you do happen to listen onto the pod, please leave us a 5-star review wherever you are listening. It really helps us a lot to get the information out even more. So we all appreciate you, and we also appreciate the logo, and some graphic content was provided by Couchfire Media. So we'll meet you back here next week at the same time, and it's going to be a great show as usual. Have a great rest of your week.